I didn't find him through luck, fate, or chance. I spoke to him long before we met. In silence, in spirit, in imagination. I whispered to the man I hadn't met yet, and he answered by showing up in my life. You are not waiting for love, you are creating it. The moment I stopped searching and started speaking to the version of him who already existed in my imagination, something shifted. I closed my eyes and felt his presence, not as a fantasy, but as a real connection that lived inside me. Every night before sleep, I'd talk to him in my mind. I'd imagine the sound of his laugh, the kindness in his eyes, the strength in his voice. I told him about my day. I thanked him for choosing me. I felt him beside me, not just hoping, but knowing he was already mine in spirit. I didn't beg for love. I didn't try to convince the universe I was ready. I became the woman who was already chosen. I carried myself with a quiet certainty. I smiled like someone deeply loved. I walked with the grace of someone already found. The world didn't see it yet, but I did. And that was enough. Because creation begins within. What we accept as real inside, the world must mirror. I didn't wait for proof. I became the proof. And slowly reality began to catch up. I didn't know his name, his face, or where he lived. But I knew his energy. I knew how he made me feel safe, adored, celebrated. I let that feeling flood me. I made space for it. I cleared out the doubt, the fear, the old stories. And I replaced them with one truth: he's already on his way. I trusted that the connection was forming, even if I couldn't see it. Because the unseen is more powerful than the visible. When you speak to your future listens. There's a frequency of love that only your spirit can tune into. And when you're aligned with it, it finds you. It doesn't need a map. It doesn't need permission. It simply follows the path of your belief. I kept talking to him, not with desperation but with delight. I celebrated our love before it ever began. And in time, without force, without fear, he appeared. Not as a stranger, but as someone I'd always known. Because I had already met him in my mind. This is not a game. It's not pretending. It's alignment. It's co-creation with a higher truth. You are not separate from what you desire. Your future is waiting for you to believe it into being. Speak to your love like he already hears you. Thank him for finding you. Feel him standing next to you when no one else is around. Because when you do, your energy changes, your life changes. And love walks into the room like it's been searching for you too. I didn't manifest him through obsession. I welcomed him through imagination. I wasn't desperate, I was ready. I wasn't broken, I was whole. And that's what he recognized, not the girl searching, but the woman who knew. I spoke to my future husband in my mind, and then I met him. Just like that. I once thought love was something I had to stumble upon, something that would appear only when the timing was perfect. But the truth revealed itself in the stillness of my imagination. Love doesn't begin with two people meeting. It begins when you close your eyes and see someone who's never touched your world, yet already lives in your heart. That's where it starts. In that quiet space, free of fear and doubt, I met him. I felt him. I welcomed him. My mind created a reality so vivid, so real, that when he finally arrived, it felt like I'd known him forever. He wasn't a stranger, he was the echo of the vision I had carried for months. I didn't wait to be chosen. I chose the feeling first. That internal connection was the seed. And from that seed, love grew into something I could finally see, touch, and hold. Everything real begins when most are afraid to look within. When I first started speaking to him in my mind, I didn't have a name or face. I only had a feeling. And that feeling guided every inner conversation. I would whisper to him before falling asleep. I'd thank him for finding me, for choosing me, for loving me the way I always dreamed of. These weren't empty daydreams. They were sacred moments of alignment. Each word I spoke in my mind brought me closer to the truth of his presence. I wasn't talking to air, I was talking to a reality waiting to take shape. There was no desperation in my voice, only certainty. I believed he heard me. I believed love was listening. And somehow, through the mystery of life, those silent exchanges created a path straight to him. Our meeting in the physical world wasn't the beginning. It was the unfolding of what had already been created in spirit. Love wasn't something I had to wait for, it was something I had to become. I started acting like someone who was already loved. I didn't need external validation because my inner world was already full. I smiled at strangers not to receive attention, but because I was radiating from the inside. I dressed like I had someone to impress even when I didn't. I carried myself like a woman who was adored. That's what love does. When it starts from within, it changes your posture, your tone, your confidence. And eventually the world notices. People feel the difference, even if they can't explain it. I was no longer reaching out from emptiness, I was overflowing with quiet certainty. The energy of being loved began attracting love in return. When you become the person you want to be in a relationship, the relationship arrives. Because life reflects not what you want, but who you are being. I didn't attract him by searching or striving. I attracted him by becoming. I became the kind of woman who no longer doubted that love was hers. I stopped asking when will he come, and began saying he's already on his way. I woke up grateful. I went to bed excited. I began to nurture the version of me who was already in love, already in chosen. That energy drew him in not through force but through resonance, because love isn't something you chase. It's something you magnetize by your vibration. When I focused on becoming peace, I attracted someone who brought calm. When I embodied joy, I met someone who added to it. It was never about fixing myself to be worthy. It was about remembering I was worthy already. And the more I lived in that truth, the faster he arrived, not because I forced it, but because I flowed into it. Every time I spoke to him in my mind, I knew I wasn't just talking into nothing. I was communicating with the unseen, sending out signals through the language of belief. There were nights when I cried while telling him I was ready. There were mornings when I smiled just imagining his arms around me. And each thought, each silent word was received somewhere beyond logic, beyond time. Our souls had already begun to connect long before our hands ever touched. That's the secret most people miss. Your thoughts are not wasted. Your emotions are not ignored. They are currents, waves that ripple into reality. I didn't need a sign, I became the sign. I didn't need to beg, I needed to believe. And that belief became a prayer, a prophecy, a path. When you speak to your future with love, your future answers with proof. I didn't change who I was to make room for someone else. I aligned with the version of me who already had what I desired. I cleaned out emotional clutter. I let go of stories that said I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, worthy enough. I stopped doubting that he existed. I started making space for him, not just in my home, but in my heart. And in that space I made room for miracles, because belief isn't passive, it's preparation. I made my life ready for love before it ever knocked on my door. I imagined dinner dates and road trips and quiet nights filled with laughter. I felt it all in advance, and as I gave energy to that reality, I became a match for it. The feeling became so familiar that when he finally appeared, nothing felt surprising. I had been living with him in spirit. Life was simply catching up to what my soul already knew. I let go of the need to have all the answers. I surrendered the timeline. I didn't need to control how he'd find me. I just needed to feel what it would be like when he did. That became my daily ritual. Tuning into the joy, speaking words of gratitude, saying thank you for loving me this way. I said it so often, it became second nature. I rewrote my inner dialogue. No more loneliness. No more worry, just peace, just knowing. My inner world became a sanctuary where love lived full time. And when you're consistent with your emotional atmosphere, life becomes consistent with its blessings. I didn't need to know the location of his entrance, I just needed to hold the door open. That's what belief does. It doesn't demand, it invites. And through that gentle invitation, love found its way to me as if it always knew where I was. There was power in not knowing his face, because it gave me freedom to imagine the truth of his presence. I didn't focus on features, I focused on feelings, the way he made me feel seen, the way I felt understood, even in silence. I painted that emotional picture in my mind until it became as real as the world around me. I spoke to him like he was already listening. I thanked him for choosing me, for showing up when others didn't, for being the one who saw me clearly. These weren't empty conversations, they were sacred moments of creation. I didn't need his image, I needed his essence. And that essence became the guide. Love is not formed by facts, it's formed by frequency. I matched the energy of what I desired and released it. And from that invisible space he appeared effortlessly. He and alive. I became the woman I always thought I had to wait for love to become. I didn't postpone my glow. I didn't pause my life. I became her now. The woman who is loved, appreciated, respected, and celebrated. I no longer waited to be picked, I walked like I was already chosen. And the world mirrored back my belief. It wasn't arrogance, it was alignment. It was self-respect rising to the surface. And as I walked in that truth, love could find me without confusion. He recognized me not because I was loud, but because I was clear. He felt what I felt. He matched what I became. And I knew it wasn't random. It was a reflection. Love doesn't always come to those who chase it. It comes to those who embody it so clearly that it has no choice but to appear. That's what I did. And love responded like it had been waiting all along. He didn't walk into my life by accident. He was the result of everything I had visualized, spoken, and believed. Every time I imagined his love, I drew it closer. Every time I whispered to him in my mind, I sent a signal into the unseen. He came not because I needed him, but because I had already known him in the quiet. That's the power of creation. You can speak to what you desire, and if your heart is aligned, it will answer. I was no longer searching, I was receiving. I wasn't asking, will he come? I was saying, he's here. That shift, subtle but strong, created a space for him to arrive. Love didn't surprise me. It fulfilled me. Because I had already lived it long before it showed up. I spoke to my future husband in my mind, and then I met him. And in that meeting, everything I believed became beautifully etched out.